Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 8 of my podcast, Book and Story World with author Priya Grewal. I hope everyone is well and having a fabulous week so far, and thank you to anyone who tunes into my podcast. So for today's episode, I thought I would read the remainder of my book Battle for the Universe by myself, Priya Grewal, which is available on Amazon in paperback or on Kindle, and the front cover subtitle is The Battle to Destroy Evil Forever. So in Season 1, Episode 2 of my podcast, I read out the first 3 chapters of my book Battle for the Universe, which is a fantasy horror. So just a brief recap. So the story starts by telling the story of the first ever beings in existence called the Feyruta. Together they built themselves big massive empires full of the beings they called Erastians, and it was a magical universe that everyone loved for billions of years. One day the High King Zarafak, whose idea it was to make the Erastians, found out that he wasn't popular or famous in his own empire. He became jealous and organized the popular and famous members of the government, the Good Feyruta, to be abducted and put into a prison called Sacrilege to be chased by demons and tortured forever. And his plan with his associates was to kill all the good Erastians, and they made a plan with all the jealous Erastians, so it was possible for their plan to take place because nearly half of the world were jealous of the popular and famous Feyruta and any of their popular and famous sons and daughters. So on the night of massacre and the abduction, fortunately one of the Feyruta called Carlin rescued everyone from the prison by tricking one of the demons into giving him his magic back by bribing him with fame and popularity. So Carlin rescued everyone, and they replicated the magic of Zarafax in case anything went wrong, the sanctuary magic. So everyone was rescued, and the good Erastians were resurrected, and the evil ones fled into their own sanctuary of magic so that the good side couldn't get to them. 1,000,000 years pass, evil never getting to good and good never getting to evil. One day, 1,000,000 years later, one of the good Feyruta called Elazra calls a government meeting, and she says that she has a plan and that it involves a baby girl who is the chosen one who can do the plan that she is suggesting to destroy evil forever. So let's pick up where we left off. Battle for the Universe, Chapter 4. As you are all aware, Elazra continued, the Council of Darkness, the 12 leaders of the End of the Universe's plan, were jealous from the beginning of time of 20 members of the Feyruta, for they asked magically who had the greatest faces of all when we all made our own faces at our birth. As we're aware, we all made our faces extremely beautiful and made the Erastians extremely beautiful. It has always been a place of high beauty. But the 12 always had a vendetta when their magic told them 20 of us had made the greatest faces of all. So, when they designed their prison Sacrilege, they did so delighting in the fact that they would be torturing the 20 over appearances too. Then, the first reason of joy in saying yes to the plan of evil for nearly 1/3 of the Erastians was their appearance envy issue too, with the 20. These were extremely vain individuals when it came to appearances. As we know, as they organised the End of the Universes with the rest of the recruited Feyruta, they started their underworld nightmare world in secret, with new activities for the Erastians and themselves to enjoy in a secret dimension. Due to their new evil ways, the Feyruta encouraged all the recruited Erastians to have open relationships and become promiscuous, and hosted parties for them to mix with one another. This was to control the situation so the Feyruta secretly became popular and famous again. Obviously, sexual relations with their own husband and wife only once evil didn't make sense anymore, and the Feyruta didn't want new open relationships without their say taking the attention off themselves, so controlled the open relationship situation by hosting parties for all to mix. So, as a result, all the Feyruta and Erastians before the Night of Evil had become very vain and in love with themselves over appearances because of the promiscuity. Consequently, the ones whose top reasons to say yes to evil over jealousy of fame and popularity instead had fast become in love with themselves over appearances too. Hence why we can trick them, Alazra told all seriously, looking around at all the stunned faces. Every member of the assembly was enraptured by Alazra's words. So, we all know that we all have the shield of protection around ourselves so no one can be harmed by evil magic again, and all the members of the nightmare world have the same shield so they can't kill one another either. I looked to see what they would do in the following scenario. If 10 million of us design new pretend faces for ourselves and design a pretend evil sanctuary and use a magical spell on our faces when they discover the situation to accept our story that we're evil members of the Feyruta who did the recruiting too, who split from the other ones after the 12 fled all as they were insulting and made our own sanctuary, then the magical spell on our faces will be that they accept our story with no questions asked. We can't place magical spells on themselves with their shields, but we can cast spells on our faces, Alazra told the assembly. No one will question who we are. So, my story is that Leroux and Harum, in disguises, the real parents of the chosen child, pretend to abduct their own baby. The 11 and Zarafak in his own sanctuary with his newly made wife keep an eye out if anyone ever comes up with anything to kill and imprison us all again in the other sanctuaries. So, they will all receive a notification when we pretend that we have abducted Leroux's and Harum's baby from the womb as she was about to give birth and return to our sanctuary with the abducted baby. We will say we managed to get around their protective magic by taking the baby upon almost being ready to be born. We will make the baby the most beautiful being ever to exist. I have worked on her face and have made her face even greater than the 20 who every single one of them envy, while of course still looking like her parents. Their demons are also jealous of the 20 faces being best of all and will envy the child too. When they see her, the 12 will come to our pretend sanctuary and they will try to kill her over her face. They will see her and marvel and then see who has the greatest face of all in existence. In a rage, they will try and kill her and her shield will activate and it won't work. They will decide to find a way to torture the pretend abducted child instead. They will come up with the idea of putting her in a fake world. One of their sacrilege town realms of hell with magic being a secret as her home. Leroux and Harum, if they agree, will raise their child themselves, the 12 believing that they are both evil, only ever seeing their disguised faces. Zarafak will become excited as he will think a new torture plan could reunite all evil again, united in torturing the child mentally as they can't kill her or imprison her or cause unbearable physical pain due to her shield. As the child is a baby, they will want her to age more to unite all in their idea of tormenting her, and don't want to get laughed at about torturing a child over envy over her beauty. So, she will have a pretend home life with no magic and no TV and will live in what they call a simple hut. As our children went to magic school for fun years later, they will invent her going to school from 4 years old and take up the time. At 23 years old, they want her to be going to their made-up job of working as an assistant and cleaner at the town hall in their made-up fake town. They want to be the fake friends from school and townspeople for their entertainment until the child turns 23. At 23 and a half years old, they want the child to start seeing demon faces on the way to work until everyone's face at work has turned into a demon too. The same faces that terrified us in Sacrilege. Then, upon going home in terror, they want Harum and Leroux to pretend not to see any demons' faces and suggest she is going crazy, as they will call it. They want this to last forever, their new nightmare being covert and her having to pretend she doesn't see them, which is why she is the chosen one. Her parents will force her to go to work and tell her to snap out of it. She will turn up to work and try to pretend in terror that she doesn't see the faces of demons. They will want to offer to the whole universe of evil to be able to come into the dimension she is in, to torture her by going into disguise as the demons. The demons, male and female, will love the plan and want to participate too. I know the plan is horrendous, but it will last 2 weeks and the chosen one can handle it and be retrieved still if the plan is 2 weeks long, and be mentally well again once we've looked after her and healed her trauma. We will insist that the secret dimension be in the location of Leroux and Harum's palace as they're the ones who did the abduction. They will be able to use their real faces, not the disguised ones in front of their child, as Zarafak will tell them to use the parents' faces, so the child relates to them in appearances. They will act, and with our presence, evil can't do anything to try and ruin her life up to 23. She has to enjoy her life until 23, which we will remind them to hate what her existence has turned into for torture. Themselves thinking the plan of torture is forever, not only 2 weeks. Through school, they want to set up fear of demon faces by telling scary stories of monsters and show some downscaled pictures of demons and put in killing as a worry and even torture, so she is scared of the demon faces. Their world will reunite for the plan of psychological torture, as they will call it, as they can't physically touch the child due to her protective shield. All will love the plan of the 12, and they will all be united into one sanctuary again, the fake world for the child, their entertainment. They will enjoy watching her in school and outside. With our shield, the family can't be watched inside their houses, so Leroux and Haroum are free to raise and love their child. All will leave the magical protection of their sanctuaries, popping into the entrance from our pretend sanctuary in Leroux and Haroum's palace, to enter the dimension when the child is 23 to participate in the torture by taking their turn, which they will all sign up to, as a demon, or to invisibly sit in the invisible stadium of seats to watch live, as opposed to over their televisions, which it will play from. It will take 2 weeks for them all to come and watch in person, whilst others come in to take their turn to torture with the demonic disguises, along with the real demons. We will put secret powers in the child and connect the powers to fear to drain all of their magic as soon as they step into the dimension, and disable any magical backup supplies or magical amulets ever created in case they lose their magic. Fear will trigger the child's secret powers. The powers put in her will replace them all with a robot version of themselves in secret with none of the rest seeing, to do everything they would have done anyway, including returning to their sanctuaries once coming into the dimension to participate or spectate. So no one will know they've been captured upon entering the dimension made by us, really, without their magical protection up. The powers will be triggered once they start transforming into demons. They will all be captured in this time. Then we can tell the Chosen One the truth. All will be sent to their own evil prison of pain, Sacrilege, to get their comeuppance, and we will be safe forever. The plan will work. I can show you all, Elazra told them all. Elazra showed them the future of the plan if they did everything she said. The Feyreruta all watched in silence. They started applauding once they saw that the whole plan would work. I know it is a hard decision to make, but we will never feel safe and can never have any more children if we don't do this plan, obviously not wanting to create new life and endanger them in case their side finds a way to get to us magically. We will honour the child with the greatest reward and title of Queen of the Universe in place of the High King and Queen. We will never stop rewarding her for her time of torment. Leroux and Haroum, I turn to you now to ask for your answer. Do you consent to the plan? Elazra turned to the pair to ask them. Everyone waited in silence as the pair decided. Leroux whispered something to Haroum. They stood up and made their way to the centre of the assembly and stood by Elazra at the podium. Haroum looked around and said, "With pride and joy we consent to the plan, for the safety of all and so we can continue to have more children in the future. Our 30th child was to be called Jazel. Here's to our Chosen One." Haroum roared to all. The entire assembly of the Feyreruta stood up and began applauding and cheering. The sound was thunderous. Leroux, Haroum and Elazra beamed at the happy, excited, relieved-looking faces. Chapter 5. A long while had passed as the Feyreruta prepared for Elazra's plan to begin. The team of 10 million to act in the pretend sanctuary of evil, along with Leroux and Haroum and their 2 daughters, all had to take acting lessons. They all designed a new face for themselves and practiced acting in front of evil and pretending to be in the torture plan with themselves over the child, all the while planning to trick their enemies and waiting to capture and defeat evil forever. Leroux and Haroum had only 2 children left who were good and had also been the victims of evil in Sacrilege. Their names were Shasta and Nea. Shasta was now their eldest good child, having been born as their 14th child originally, and Nea their 16th child. Both had only been just over 10,000 years old when the plan of evil had struck. Both had also been betrayed by their future husbands, their eternity partners. It had taken them a long time to heal from the trauma from the night of killing, and their 15 minutes in Sacrilege, and the shock of who their traitors were. Like their parents, they also had to deal with the betrayal and shock of their siblings choosing to put them into Sacrilege for an eternity of pain and fear. Now they were both ready to defeat them all. Shasta and Nea were now just over 1 million years old. They had married and moved in with their new partners quite a long time ago. Their partners would also be coming into their pretend sanctuary to act in front of evil. With all the Feyeruta's magic combined, none of them would have to act when in their own palaces, as evil wouldn't be able to spy on them to check if they were being tricked. They also had privacy in their own sanctuary, so they couldn't be spied upon outside of their houses. That would mean evil would never overhear anything, and they only had to pretend to be evil when meeting up with evil to go over the plan of psychological torture for Jazel. Shasta and Naya were now trained professional actresses, as were their husbands. They would live in the pretend world for their sister, which was really a Hell Realm town, downscaled originally from the magical beauty of the real world for fear for the good Feyaruta and Sacrilez. The child would never know any different to not enjoy her pretend hometown. Shasta and Naya would then return to their pretend sanctuary of palaces when the child went to sleep at night. Shasta and Naya struggled with thinking about their younger sister to be born, being tormented by demon faces for 2 weeks, and not being born into the real world, but knew that she could never be born if they didn't go through with the plan. This was the only way Jazel could exist through the plan, along with more future siblings and children for themselves. Along with the only way to feel safe and secure again. Neither of the two ever wanted to face the fear and pain of Sacrilez again or be killed. Shasta and Naya were to pretend to be children and raise Jazel with their parents. The good Feyaruta knew that the reunited Council of Darkness would order the downscaling of all appearances so that Jazel would never see the real beauty until after evil was defeated. This was so the plan of torment through demon faces was scarier with no beautiful faces around. They would act for 23.5 years around Jazel, pretending to be children too, and then act for the horrendous 2 weeks of torment, and then, with their parents, rescue Jazel once all had entered the pretend sanctuary, who were evil and been captured through the secret powers in Jazel. Once all were professionally trained to act and pretend to be evil in front of evil, it was time for the chosen one, Jazel, to be born. They had to wait 23 years to capture evil, as the majority would enter their sanctuary in the 23 years with no reason to do so. They wouldn't leave their walls until it was time for torment. Also, with all evil distracted by watching the torment on their massive widescreen televisions, it was easier to replace all with robots once they had entered the arena of torment to watch or participate in Jazel's torment. Evil would never know they would trigger the hidden powers in Jazel themselves and be captured upon entry into the arena. Jazel was born the most beautiful being in existence in the winter of that year. Through the Feyeruta's magic, the Council of Darkness, followed by the rest of evil, would only see the constructed memories magicked in when looking at the baby Jazel's memory. They would see from her perspective being in the womb and then being with a man and a woman in a palace room, which would be when the Council of Darkness would enter. Really, she would see her real parents' faces the whole time. They looked after her for a day and bonded before entering the pretend sanctuary of theirs to trick evil. The time had come. Jazel was mesmerizingly beautiful with her ivory skin and silky ebony hair and eyes that looked like liquid gold. She gurgled in her mum's arms and smiled happily up at her dad too. The team of 10 million, Shasta, Naya, Leroux, Harum and Elazra, were ready to step into the sanctuary and begin the plan of capturing and defeating evil forever. Chapter 6. Zarifak was sitting in his palace dining room at the head of a long table. He had made his wife Clarina as soon as he had fled into his own sanctuary when the night of evil had failed to last longer than 15 minutes. He now had 3 children with her, aged between 3,000 and 5,000. He had 2 sons and 1 daughter. His sons were named Asakra and Omel. His daughter was named Dimasa. His evil family, ensuring only children who would choose evil would be born, and only making a wife who would choose evil in the situation, were all sitting at the long table talking to one another, having just finished their dinner. Zarifak had made a limited number of families so that his children had friends to play with. He didn't bother making a grand empire with the failure. He just needed to make enough beings to entertain himself and his wife and children as they got older. He had created a small society of around 100 families. He made 50 males and 50 females for his small world. He only made the ones who would like being made despite the failure of evil with good and never mock his failure. He also only made ones who would get jealous when he showed them all the fame and popularity of the good Feyaruta and their sons and daughters. After a few minutes of watching his clip, they became as invested as himself in recapturing and killing all the good in their sanctuaries and sending the good and popular Feyruta into sacrilege again. Zarafak had a good time with his own sons and daughters and wife, being as committed to trying to capture good again as himself. 1,000,000 years had passed since the failed end of the universes, and Zarafak had not found a way to capture the good side again. He had an alarm set up to notify himself, as agreed with the 11, in case any of the other magical beings of evil ever came up with a plan to capture good, when the 11 thought he would be fleeing into their evil sanctuary with themselves, hiding from the rest of evil. As Zarafak had made the 11 aware of themselves not being popular or famous as government members, he knew checking magically that they would turn on him as well. So, he fled into his own sanctuary of protective magic, leaving his first wife and evil accomplice Kalsha by herself. He assumed she too had made herself a husband. He hadn't tried to contact the 11, his old friends and former wife who made up the Council of Darkness with himself, the creators of killing, sacrilege, pain and demons. He no longer cared for any of them, as he resented fleeing due to them turning on him. Zarafak felt content with his new family and world, but desired vengeance on the popular and famous Feyruta, along with any popular and famous sons and daughters, even after all this time. He hated the fact that they all survived on the other side and were popular and famous again with the good Erastians. It made him squirm inside. Suddenly, as Zarafak was thinking to himself about his failure again, the alarm sounded. His wife Clarine and his children stopped what they were doing abruptly and all turned to look at him. A red light was flashing in the room and the alarm was extremely loud. He paused in shock, realizing that the notification meant that someone had thought of an idea to reach good somehow. "What is that for?" his red-haired wife asked him, looking confused. Zarafak stood up abruptly as his family all gaped at him. "You know what it's for," Zarafak exclaimed excitedly. "It means someone has come up with an idea." His family gasped, staring at him. "Let me go and see what is going on, family," Zarafak told his family excitedly. They gaped after him as he rushed out of the room. He went into his private office to investigate what was going on. He hurried to his desk and sat down, ordering his magic to show him what was going on in one of the other sanctuaries. As the 12 had made the sanctuaries together, he could still look to see what was going on in them all and communicate if he chose to. His magic conjured a scene before him. He saw a male and female together and quickly saw that they were in an evil Feyruta sanctuary, and the information magically told him that they had left the rest of the Feyruta as a horde of 10,000,000, as they had found the others too insulting to live in the same sanctuary with. He chuckled to himself, remembering the ways that had made a lot of the Feyruta unpopular in the first place, being petty and insulting to others. So, they too turned on one another, Zarafak thought to himself. He looked closer to see what the male and female Feyruta were standing around. He looked in surprise as he realized they were standing around a cot. A cot, Zarafak thought to himself? What is going on here? He asked himself. He ordered his magic to zoom in closer on the baby. He gasped. "What is that?" he shouted out in disgust. Chapter 7. The baby he looked at was the most beautiful being he had ever seen. He stared dismayed at her shiny ivory skin and silky black hair and amazing golden eyes. He could see the baby was a girl. He said to himself after a moment. "What is this diabolical occurrence?" he asked himself out loud, looking with disgust at the face of the baby. Zarafak felt envy on the inside as he stared at the baby's astonishingly beautiful face. He couldn't help and stare transfixed. Himself and his former wife and 11 friends had been jealous of 20 of the Feyruta's faces when they had asked together who had made the greatest faces of all after their birth. They were all extremely proud and happy with their own faces, which they had made themselves, as their faces were extremely beautiful. The 12 together had sneered and felt hatred to the 20 for the rest of their eternity. Until marriage and sex came along as an idea, and Zarafak wanted to come up with something to rival it as an invention, and thought of the empire of made beings. He had loved being the High King, and couldn't believe his name had fallen to dust, as he enjoyed himself with his friends, and had insulted many of the beings he made in the early years if they beat him at a game or anything else. The whole reason he came up with the idea was to become as famous and popular as the Feyruta male who had invented marriage and sex. Zarafak continued to stare at the baby, envy growing like a gathering storm inside of him. Himself and his former wife Kalsha and the 10 who made up the Council of Darkness with himself delighted in the fact that they would be torturing and skinning the Feyaruta alive over appearances, as well as popularity and fame in Sakralez. Forever. They knew that this was true for many of the Erastians too. Now he stared dismayed and horrified as this face was even more beautiful than the 20 whose faces had caused such envy. Suddenly, Zarafak looked dismayed as he saw all 11 members of the Council of Darkness teleport into the room with the baby. There were the 5 married couples standing there along with Kalsha. Rakan was a male and married to Shisa. Tuskor was male and married to the female Harfilto. Morotil was male and married to the female Nizul. Festoon was married to the female Amalsha, and Weslov was married to the female Orison. Kalsha stood staring at the baby horrified without her more recently made husband. Zarafak scowled at the scene before him. He knew he had his shield to protect him from any of their created evil magic hitting himself, so he could teleport in without the rest attacking him. All members of evil had the shield to protect themselves from one another too, as planned. "I'm going too," Zarafak said to himself. Next, he teleported into the same room as the others. He stood in the sanctuary of the male and female Feyaruta. Nobody noticed as he teleported into the palace room with the cot. He told his magic to tell himself the names of the male and female Feyaruta with the baby. They had recruited nearly half the universe into being evil. It was impossible for him to remember every single name without using magic. He had loved being adored by the masses when organizing the evil plan of destruction. A single name didn't really matter to him. "Mesto and Sabalt," Zarafak said out loud, announcing his presence. His magic had informed him of the pair's names. Everyone turned around to look at him, still looking distracted by the baby. "You," Kalsha spat. "Yes, me," Zarafak responded with a smirk. "Move aside and let me see this abomination," Zarafak instructed the others. His former wife and former 10 friends moved aside to let him see the baby. Mesto and Sabalt smiled viciously. Up close, the baby was so beautiful and irresistible looking. She gurgled, looking up at them all, happy in her own little world. Zarafak felt jealousy rise in him again as he stared at the baby's face. "Explain," he ordered Mesto and Sabalt, who were both grinning evilly. The pair cackled. "We stole her from the womb," Mesto the female celebrated. "How is this possible?" Zarafak asked curiously. The 11 stood around listening and staring at the baby, not saying a word. "We found a loophole," Sabalt told them all. "We couldn't investigate what Team Good was doing when looking magically at the present with their magical protection from the sanctuary magic. So we thought of watching them a day into the future instead. We saw that they were all to have babies in a new baby-making season for their world and found out that the one pair called Laro and Haruma, the Feyaruta, had worked on their baby to make her even more beautiful than usual for our species. We found out that her face was going to beat the 20s, whom we envied for their faces too, and found a way to abduct her from the womb. So, we can make their world suffer pain and horror in some way. So, we went back in time using magic only to get rid of the shield around the baby upon conception, and removed it, and then came back to the present and managed to teleport the baby into this cot when she was about to be born at 9 months. We were the first thing she saw," Sabalt bragged happily to them all. Zarafak looked at both, stunned. "Well, congratulations to you both," Zarafak complimented the pair, feeling amazed. "This is an immense deed," Zarafak added. Mesto and Sabalt continued to cackle. "Is this the most beautiful being ever to exist?" Rakan demanded out loud. A magic word formed in front of them all, in big purple letters, stating, "Yes." The 11 gulped, looking venomously at one another. Zarafak thought for a moment. He smiled quietly to himself. "Let's kill her," Zarafak commented quietly. He smirked as everyone turned around to look at him. There was a pause. Even Mesto and Sabalt looked serious for the moment. "Everyone agree?" Amalsha asked out loud a couple of moments later. The whole room said agreed out loud simultaneously. They all began to smile viciously. "I'll do it," Zarafak insisted. "No," Kalsha snapped. "Let's all do it together." After 3, she paused for a moment. 1, 2, 3. Zarafak lifted his hands in the air and ordered his magic to kill. Orange flames left all 14 of their hands and the killing magic struck the baby. Chapter 8. A pink shield activated around the baby girl as the orange killing magic was about to strike her. The magic hit the shield and couldn't penetrate the walls of the shield. Ah! Zarafek roared. All 14 of the beings standing in the room dropped their hands. They all looked venomous and enraged at the baby not dying. I thought you got rid of her shield upon conception, Taskov roared to Mesto and Sabalt. Mesto and Sabalt looked dismayed and then evilly defensive. We did, Sabalt spat. A backup one must have reactivated in the moments after abduction, Mesto realized. The 14 stood in silence, staring at the beautiful, unaware baby. Do you know what her name is? Zarafek demanded to know. They were going to call her Jazel, Mesto informed them all. Jazel, Zarafek commented snidely and bitterly, hating the child and her beauty. There was a silence in the room as all failed to kill the baby. I have an idea, Harfilto suddenly announced. She had a sly smirk on her face. What is it? Zarafek asked moodily. Harfilto waved her hand so that 14 grand chairs appeared in the palace room in front of the cot in a circle. Everyone sit, she commanded. The others grumbled for a moment and then sat on the chairs. Harfilto grinned at them all. Let us not see killing not working on her as a failure. Let's take this opportunity to reunite our scattered evil universe by coming up with a torture idea for her, for them all to love and worship us again, Harfilto suggested to all. The 13 glanced at one another, feeling slightly more enthused. Something that could reunite everyone into one sanctuary and give us our former glory back. How we were all guaranteed fame and popularity forever with our hell and torture and scaring with demons and pain plan for the jealous, as opposed to finding a way to kill the Feyaruta and any popular children, which would render us forgotten again eventually. The Erastians may have even got jealous of us organising it all in the Killing All version and want to dispose of us instead in the future, Marital exclaimed to all. Oh, you gave us everything in those days, Sabalt complimented the former Council of Darkness. You returned to us the world. Such glory and praise and love did we receive from the masses after ruining it all the first time with our empires and beyond. The 12 enjoyed the praise from Sabalt and wanted to restore the love for themselves with the Feyaruta too, as well as the Erastians. Everyone looked lost in thought for a moment, trying to come up with an idea of torture that would work around Jazel, the baby's shield. We can't touch her physically, Harfilto announced to all. As we saw, Zarafek muttered rudely to himself. I know, Kalsha stood up abruptly. Let's see if we can send her into a prison, Kalsha exclaimed. Zarafek chuckled at the idea of putting a baby in one of their sacrilege caves for a prison. Kalsha ordered her magic to teleport the baby into a sacrilege hell cave. The pink shield activated again, the baby having no idea what was going on around her. Zarafek laughed. That's boring anyway, Zarafek told them all. Who's going to want to watch a baby in a prison not knowing any different? Zarafek smirked at Kalsha as she sat down again. He liked making a fool out of her and showing her up. The others chuckled at the idea. We can't touch her physically, Harfilto stated again, but that doesn't mean we can't manipulate the environment around her and torture her mentally instead. The other 13 gasped at the idea. What an idea, Weslov exclaimed. Zarafek got to thinking as quickly as he could. How would he himself like to torture the child who had been stolen from the magical empire and good side of the universe? He came up with something that he would enjoy. I know, Zarafek declared to the other 13. The shield activates if any dangerous magic hits the baby. But if 2 of us raise the baby in one of our sacrilege Helltown versions of our universe towns, and take her there for it to be her home, then she won't know any different, and we can create a fake world around her, Zarafek roared. Her punishment for the extra beauty? Never knowing the real beauty of the real universe, Zarafek declared to all. Excellent idea, Festoon complimented Zarafek. Zarafek smirked. He loved the idea of the baby never seeing the beauty of the real universe and all the fun things to do there as a punishment for her extra beauty. Mesto and Sabalt glanced at one another. Well, we abducted the baby from Leroux and her room, Mesto insisted. She's ours to raise in the fake sacrilege Helltown world. It was our idea and genius that means we've stolen one of the Feyaruta's babies, who is also the most beautiful being ever to exist. Leroux and her room, Zarafek thought to himself. He scowled. How he still hated all the popular and famous Feyaruta to this day. Leroux, Zarafek thought to himself, the one who created stories being in book form and words. Her room, the one who created music. Zarifak smiled, knowing the plan they come up with to torture the married pair's baby forever would be revenge for jealousy of the two popular and loved inventions. That's fine, Zarifak responded. We didn't want to do the work anyway, she screeched to all. The plan suited the 12. So, what next? Rakan asked. Zarifak thought to himself again. He was struck with a diabolical idea for his worst nightmare of a child. We offer to the members of the Fayaruta, if they say yes to the plan, to be the pretend townspeople. She will live in one of the Sacrilege hellhouses with no idea and will only hear about magic in the stories we put in. There will be no TV. To take up her childhood, we can downscale the magic school of the real universe that our children attended upon reaching 100 years old. We don't want to get laughed at for torturing a child later on, so we will begin the mental torture at 23. We will give her a role to do and make up something called money that is needed to live, and she will go and do something called a job. She will begin the job at 18 years old. At 23, we will transform the faces around her into demonic faces. Everyone can come in to participate if they say yes to the plan. It will be the new torture arena, Zarifak suggested to all. Yes, the others roared excitedly. But that's not all, Zarifak said to all. When she arrives home screaming, Sabalt and Mesto, her pretend parents, will pretend they can't see the demonic faces and tell her she is going crazy. This can be her punishment for the shield. Obviously, we can't physically harm her, so we will manipulate and ruin her world, which she will enjoy for 23 years, and then turn it into a mental nightmare. Oh, Zarifak the Almighty, Festin announced, standing up. You are truly the most amazing being ever to exist. A brilliant idea. I'm already excited, Festoon added. The others also stood up, cheering and applauding. Zarifak remained seated, looking calm. He glanced at Mesto and Sabalt. You should take the form of Leroux and Haroum so the baby feels safe after looking in the mirror and seeing a resemblance to your faces. We will hide the beauty of the real world and downscale all faces that will be in it, Zarifak instructed. Zarifak smiled, struck by another idea. He remembered how many traitors were in the sons and daughters of Leroux and Haroum. 16 of them. He remembered the 2 good ones who were left and therefore had had their little sister stolen from them. We should get 2 beings to play the real sisters of Jazel in disguise. They can go into the disguise of the 2 sisters. Let's make one a pretend younger sister when Jazel is 4 so that she doesn't have the attention of the youngest. Obviously, in the real world, we wait until one child is 150 years at full adulthood before having another. We can make one child around 2 years older than her, Zarifak told them all. This will make it even worse when Jazel has no one to turn to and her sisters tell her there are no demon faces outside, Zarifak announced to all evilly. She will feel scared and betrayed by her family, knowing they're pretending not to see. We can whisper her name in it here and there so she doesn't actually think she is mentally disturbed, Zarifak announced, to confirm that the demon faces are definitely real and definitely there. The rest continued to cheer. We have 2 daughters who would be great at it, Sabalt declared. They always loved being in plays back when we were all in one universe together before our Night of Evil, he informed the rest. Excellent, Zarifak responded, glad that the family was so enthusiastic about doing the work of raising the baby in a fake world until torture began at 23. It meant himself had less work to do. During her school years, we will make up subjects for her to do in place of teaching our children about their different magical powers. We'll make up history and turn number games into a subject we can call maths and throw in some other gibberish about how the world came to exist. We will set up fears for her to feel scared and think she is in danger when it is time for us to appear in demon form and drive her crazy. Through stories at school, we will place the existence of killing, monsters and demons, and physical torture. We will show images of monsters in storybooks. This is needed for her to feel scared of the demons in the first place and fear for her safety, Zarifak announced to all. The other 13 cheered and celebrated Zarifak's idea. Zarifak grinned, loving the praise beginning once again. Harfilto stopped for a moment. Wait, let's check magically to see if the plan will reunite all evil into one sanctuary and restore our glory, Harfilto suggested. Everyone fell silent. She conjured up a scene in front of her to show them all what would happen once they announced the abduction and torture plan to all. Zarifak's eyes widened as he saw everyone look at the image sent to themselves of the baby and the details of their plan, and in seconds becoming famous and popular and loved again. The scene showed even the demons becoming jealous of the greatest face in existence, including theirs, and delighting at the future prospect of mentally torturing the child by popping in as themselves in their own form. All 14 watched the scenes of cheering and fame and popularity lasting forever. Zarafak smiled, elated. I'm a genius, Zarafak thought to himself. I will fashion myself as the humble servant of evil again, serving everyone's needs. The scene in front of the 14 faded away. Right, Zarafak announced. Let's sort out the finer details between ourselves and get ready to announce the news to our universe of evil, Zarafak declared to all. Chapter 9. Zarafak was ready to communicate with the entire evil universe hidden in their sanctuaries. He was going to speak to represent the 13 others with himself. They had designed a rough plan for the whole thing by then. The Feyaruta had put a spell down at the beginning of time so no one could spy on anyone in their own palaces when they had all been born. This meant that with the baby's shield, no one could watch Jazel grow up in her fake home with the 2 villains who had abducted her and with 2 evil females pretending to be her sisters. So, Zarafak had come up with a way to entertain evil as well by turning Jazel's school and job years into a TV show for all to watch, waiting for her life to turn into their demonic warp at 23. The Feyaruta selected to act around the child as the school teachers and students who would be good at acting would delight in being the cast on TV for it. They could watch everything Jazel did outside of the house. He would show Jazel's trips outside of the house up to 4 as news bulletins before school began for the show. Zarafak smiled widely to himself as he made contact with the masses of evil in their sanctuaries. My friends, he announced to all. He had conjured a projection of his face to appear in front of everybody in the sanctuaries. I am so sorry for what happened to us all 1 million years ago. I am sorry the plan failed and we only had 15 minutes of glory to torture the Feyaruta and revel in the death of billions. I am sorry I fled along with the rest of the Feyaruta. I fled the Council of Darkness and all the Feyaruta too. I made myself a new wife and hid in my own sanctuary, making only a few for a new town. I am truly sorry, my friends, but today we have experienced a miracle. 2 of our own, the Feyaruta named Mesto and Sabalt, former organisers of the End of Universes, have managed to abduct a baby. Upon using some loopholes in magic, they have stolen a good baby from the womb of the Feyaruta called Leroux and her husband Haroom. You may remember them as the ones who invented books and music. Zarafak paused for effect. We did try and kill the baby, but it didn't work as the baby's shield of protection had reactivated by then. Let me first show you the baby, Zarafak announced to all. Her name is Jazel. Every Feyaruta, Erastian and Demon watched Zarafak's announcement, enraptured by his news. The masses of evil gasped as they saw the most beautiful face they had ever seen projected in front of themselves. They gasped and soon started to feel jealousy at the silky hair and astonishing ivory skin that practically glowed and beautiful golden eyes. As you can probably tell, Zarafak continued, myself along with the Council of Darkness and Mesto and Sabalt have discovered that the baby is indeed the most beautiful being in existence. Even more beautiful than the 20 whose faces we all came to envy so much in being the best made of all. Unbeatable, until now. The 2 members of the Feyaruta worked on the baby's face for some reason to make her the most beautiful being in existence. The masses of evil stared at the baby, listening to Zarafak, spitting and spluttering in disgust. Fear not, my friends, Zarafak announced to all. Myself and the Council of Darkness and our friends Mesto and Sabalt have come up with a torture plan for the child, as physically harming her or imprisoning her in a Sacral's hell cave doesn't work. So, Mesto and Sabalt are going to raise the child in a Sacral's hell house, the baby thinking the Sacral's hell town is the real world. They will be in the disguise of her real parents, with beauty downscaled, and 2 of their daughters will be in disguise as the child's real sisters, who she has also been abducted from. We will create a pretend fake world script, and the Feyaruta, if they agree, will play the townspeople and work with us in the fake world, and then turn it into a demonic warp when the child is 23.5 years old. She will begin to see demonic faces everywhere, and her pretend parents and sisters will pretend there is nothing there and tell her she is crazy. This horror will last for all of eternity, and every single one of you can enter the torture arena to participate in tormenting the child by being a demonic face she has to walk past or run from, with all of eternity to take a turn. And there will also be an invisible stadium around the child for all to come in and spectate in person should they choose to, or you can watch from the comfort of your homes on TV, Zarafak cackled. The masses of evil cheered and roared. So, as Feyaruta, Erastian, and Demonkind all together, do you consent to the plan of the fake world and warp for the baby Jazel, the most beautiful being in existence? I will send a voting poll out for all to vote, Zarifak instructed all. Every single member of Evil looked at the poll that had appeared before them. The options were fake world warp of mental torture for eternity for Jazel, yes or no. Every single member of the Sanctuaries of Evil selected yes. Zarifak showed the 100% poll for all to see next to the projection of his face. Woohoo! Zarifak cheered to all. Next, Zarifak announced, do you all consent to the walls of each Sanctuary of Evil being dropped and reuniting as the Nightmare World into one big Sanctuary of Evil and celebrating our new plan of torture forever together? Zarifak asked the evil masses. He sent out a poll again. Every member of the evil sanctuaries cheered and grinned at the torment plan and voted yes. Zarifak beamed and showed the evil masses the vote results, showing 100% agreeing to reuniting. Let the magical walls of the sanctuaries drop so we are all reunited as one nightmare world again, Zarifak announced to all. And let's have a party, he roared. The magical walls separating the different evil divisions fell. Zarifak began playing Sacrileg's Helm music the Council of Darkness had designed for Sacrileg, and began a reunited Nightmare World whole universe party. The masses of evil celebrated as their magical walls dropped and started jumping and flying and screaming screams of joy in their air as they all began dancing to the Sacrileg's Helm music. Enjoy, my friends, Zarifak roared to all. You will be hearing from us again soon, and we will let you know how our little torture victim is getting on in her fake world. The masses cheered and danced and did somersaults in the air. Zarifak cut off his projection. He turned to his 11 former friends and Masto and Sabot. They all cheered and grinned at their reinstated fame and popularity. We've got it back, Orison cheered loudly. We've got it all back. Zarifak chuckled and went to look at the beautiful baby Jazel in her cot. He still felt consumed with envy as he stared at her, but felt elated at the mental torture plan, restoring glory and fame to himself again through the plan. He tried to touch her face for a moment, but her shield activated again and she looked up at him suspiciously. Zarifak laughed again. No matter, Zarifak said to the baby. We will be mentally torturing you forever in 23.5 years' time, he promised to the baby. She looked at him with her eyebrow furrowed. Looks like you brought us the world again, little one, Zarifak cooed to the baby. The other 13 laughed around him in delight. Chapter 10. Leroux and Harum cradled their baby in their arms in the new Hell House they would be raising her in with their 2 daughters. They watched her sleep, amazed at her beauty as well. Shasta and Nea sat next to their parents on the couch. Their fake names were Divaka and Barinto. They had all taken to the stage before coming into the house to be cheered by the reunited masses of evil for being the pretend family who had raised Jazel until 23. Shasta and Nea felt sickened by the applause but knew this was how they would destroy evil forever. All evil had taken the bait as Alezra had said they would. All 4 had their own appearance in the house. Their faces were merely downgraded from their beauty. Leroux kissed her daughter on the forehead. The 2 would take it in turns to go into their palace when Jazel slept, where they would act in front of the reunited and reformed Council of Darkness, heroes to evil again. They had the freedom to speak to the other families in their pretend sanctuary as well. Shasta and Nea would spend time with their husbands when Jazel slept at night time. They fell for it, Leroux whispered to her sleeping daughter. Harum chuckled. Our brave little sister is giving us back the universe, Shasta whispered to the sleeping baby. She's our hero, Nea whispered to her sleeping sister. 23.5 years for her powers to be activated in secret, and they will all be stripped of their magic and replaced by a hologram and sent to Sacrileg for hundreds of billions of years before being killed forever as soon as they enter the arena, Harum declared to all. And our daughter will be queen of the universe, rewarded forever for her suffering in the demonic warp, Leroux exclaimed, kissing her baby daughter on the forehead. The secret dimension was a portal bubble located in Leroux and Harum's palace. They merely went to the room and stepped into the bubble to enter the pretend world dimension. In the future, all would be leaving their sanctuaries unknowingly to step into the non-protected palace and bubble. The family could not wait for the day evil got their comeuppance. It meant 2 weeks of mental torture for their daughter, but she could handle it. Harum kissed his baby daughter on the forehead too. I love you, my daughter Jazel, he whispered in a hushed tone. The family sat on the couch watching their beautiful chosen one sleep, with no idea that she wasn't in the real world. 10 years later. Chapter 11. Zarafak chuckled as he watched Jazel on his screen in front of himself. He had ordered the evil Feyaruta female, who would be the child's cover teacher for the day, to snap at her. He watched as Jazel looked innocently up at the evil being without knowing it. She was being scolded for talking whilst doing classwork. Turning the child's life into a demonic warp was a hit TV show for himself. Everyone loved watching it. The Feyaruta chosen to act as students and teachers and townspeople loved their role. They were celebrated for doing the work by the entire evil universe the nightmare world reinstated. Zarafak had gloried in his fake world idea to be turned into a demonic walk by themselves for all of eternity for the child for the last 10 years. All the Feyaruta were celebrated again, loving fame and popularity again, as they all scripted the fake world for Jazel. They had named her pretend hometown Mazult in honour of the male and female Feyaruta who had abducted the baby and were raising her for the warp. The name was from combining the names Mezto and Sabalt together. They had called the pretend country Zerilto in honour of the fake world being Zarafak's idea, and in honour of Harfilto, who suggested some kind of mental torture for the child when killing didn't work. They called the fake planet for the child Vakarine in honour of the two evil daughters of Mezto and Sabalt, Divaka and Berinto, for doing the work of raising the child too. Zarafak had continued to be admired for setting up fears for the child to feel scared of the demons at 23.5 years old. Along with the full team of Feyaruta working together in big meetings, they made up stories and pictures for Jazel to look at as a child. This would ensure her fear at 23 for the demonic warp, which of course the nightmare world thrived upon. The Council of Darkness celebrated their reunion and reformation and were the leaders to all again. Zarafak stayed with his current wife Clarine and didn't reunite with Kalsha. However, once again the reunited evil government set up mixers for everyone to attend by encouraging promiscuity so that they didn't become unpopular through uncontrolled pairings happening, which would also take the attention off themselves. Zarafak thoroughly enjoyed controlling Jazel's life. He still felt jealousy of her face regardless and couldn't wait to warp her forever. They would force her into silence, having to pretend she didn't see any demons through her fake family pretending they were not there. The Feyaruta set up festivals and school activities for Jazel to enjoy herself and grieve her lost world of enjoyment during the warp. Zarafak had reunited the whole evil universe. He had enjoyed his worship even more this time because the Nightmare World members loved the part where Jazel would begin to stay silent and have to pretend the demonic faces weren't there, which would be her reaction to it. The mental torture warp part was truly diabolical. Zarafak grinned, staring at Jazel as she did her classwork again after being scolded by the teacher. Zarafak had welcomed Jaheros back into the fold, the reason why the original plan failed. Zarafak didn't want Jaheros as an enemy, as he had started the empire of the species of demon he was. All members of the Nightmare World had been granted creation powers in case they all had to flee into the sanctuaries in case of failure and could make beings if they chose to. Zarafak continued with Jaheros as an individual. Zarafak communicated with Jaheros as an individual when the walls of the sanctuaries dropped to one another 10 years ago. He had encouraged him not to be worried about the others knowing of his being tricked all that time ago. Zarafak with the Council of Darkness forgave Jaheros in front of their entire evil nation and welcomed all new empires of demon species into their reunited world. Jaheros was extremely eager to torment Jazel forever. There were no loose ends, all worshipped himself and the Feyaruta again. Zarafak looked back at the screen and watched as Jazel stopped her classwork to listen to the teacher for the day, read a storybook to the pretend class. Zarafak chuckled as he had ordered a cover teacher for the day to scold Jazel, so she still had a bond with her usual teacher. Zarafak laughed and laughed again at the evil future he had planned for the now 10-year-old child. Chapter 12. Jazel was now in year 6 at her school. She had just recently celebrated her 11th birthday at home with her parents and sisters. She had cut a cake and had a lovely day playing games with her parents and sisters. She had brought sweets to her class for the day to celebrate her 11th birthday with her class. Jazel loved school. She loved reading books and writing stories in class. She loved her family and the evenings spent listening to her parents tell herself and her sisters stories. She loved when her parents gave her and her sisters riddles to work out together. She adored her older sister Divaka and her younger sister Berinto, who had just turned 6 years old recently. Jazel had recently stopped speaking to one of her friends, Tiaza. Jazel had got annoyed with Tiaza bossing her around, and she had snapped to her a little the other day, telling her to hurry up when they were in the playground. So Jazel had come to school one morning and told Tiaza she no longer wanted to be her friend as she was too bossy. It was a few days later now, and Tiaza approached Jazel as she stood by the class door offering her classmates sweets as they went into the playground for break time. Tiaza smiled gently at Jazel. "Sorry about being bossy and snappy," Tiaza apologized. "I've learned my lesson now. Can we be friends again?" Tiaza asked. Jazel watched Tiaza's face, which looked apologetic. She thought for a moment and then said, "Okay," and offered Tiaza a sweet. Jazel ran off with the rest of the girls in class and Tiaza once she had finished offering her class sweets for her birthday. Jazel loved talking and playing games with the rest of the girls in class once it was break time. Tiaza laughed as she left the fake world dimension for Jazel as the school day was over. The plan had been to snap at Jazel, but Jazel's reaction in the fake world had been to stop talking to Tiaza. The Fae Arita knew this would happen from planning the script of the fake world and knew how to ensure Tiaza was her close pretend friend again by apologizing. The fame of the entire nightmare world watching the school show for the warp meant everything to Tiaza. She transformed into her full self as everyone playing a role in the fake world used their own faces but downscaled their beauty as agreed for the fake world, so the demons were really scary for Jazel at 23. Tiaza laughed as her and the other Fae Arita pretended they were children as opposed to the first beings in existence who were hundreds of billions of years old. They were ancient. Tiaza teleported into her own palace. She stood in front of the mirror and transformed back into her pretend child self. She giggled looking at herself. "I still don't look too bad," Tiaza thought to herself as she looked at her pretend child form and her downscaled beauty. She transformed into her full form again and admired her face in the mirror. She scowled after a second and conjured Jazel's 11-year-old face in the mirror. She growled viciously looking at Jazel's ivory skin, golden eyes and silky ebony hair next to her own form. "You're ugly anyway," Tiaza hissed at Jazel's image in her mirror. Tiaza stared as she saw, as usual, that Jazel's beauty was greater than her own. She stiffened. "No matter," she cackled out loud a moment later. "You're not even in the real world, little Jazel," Tiaza mocked Jazel's image in the mirror. "Abducted from your real parents and sisters and living with evil Fae Arita who are raising you in a fake world, only to be mentally tortured forever at 23.5 years old. That's only because killing or imprisoning and inflicting unbearable physical pain on you doesn't work with your magical protective shield. Although," Tiaza thought to herself, "what am I talking about?" She laughed out loud. "This mental torture is way better. No one to turn to, no one to confide in, just left to rot mentally in our psychological prison of terrifying demon faces forever. Your pretend family pretending the demons are not there, and you, Jazel, too young to try and move out of your parents' house, trapped as a child without realizing it." Tiaza giggled again, thinking about the real world where 150 years old was the official adult age for their children. Jazel would be trapped in their mental prison for all of eternity at 23, tricked into thinking she was an adult at 18 and old enough to have a job to go for pretend money, as opposed to a child as Zarafak had invented. The Fae Arita had decided on 18 as the pretend official adult age for the pretend world around Jazel. Tiaza felt venomous again looking at Jazel's astonishing beauty in the mirror at 11 years old. "Everything we do, everything in your life, your pretend home, your pretend school, your pretend job in the future, your pretend friends and family, it's all to imprison you in our mental hell for you forever," Tiaza hissed to the image she was so jealous of in her mirror. She felt powerful again and hissed at Jazel's face in her mirror again. "You're nothing but a stain on my shoe, you little cretin," Tiaza roared, raising her hands and magically smashing her mirror into pieces. 12.5 years later. Chapter 13. It was 3 a.m. in the morning, and Jazel's family sat in their living room whilst Jazel slept in her bedroom upstairs. Her room cradled their daughter, Shasta, and Nero cradled their daughter, Nea. They had a magical spell in place, so Jazel had no idea that they were sitting in the living room together at 3 a.m. discussing herself. She would never be able to hear them or walk in on the scene. The family had raised Jazel and acted in front of her for 23.5 years. Themselves, along with the rest of the good volunteers in their pretend sanctuary and trapped to evil, had pretended to be evil and used their disguised faces in front of the nightmare world in hiding for 23.5 years. It was now time for the demonic terror warp to begin for Jazel, and for evil to be defeated once and for all by having their magic stripped unknowingly and being sent to their own torture-fear prison, Sacrilege. The family grieved together as it was hours before the demonic warp would start. They spoke and comforted one another, talking about their feelings and the dread and horror they felt at what Jazel was about to go through and having to pretend to be her traitors in front of her. They expressed their anguish to one another and then strengthened themselves again. "She can do it," Leroux exclaimed to them all. 2 weeks we have to suffer to capture evil by having to act and watch our lovely Jazel be terrorized for 2 weeks. Then we will get our revenge for having to raise her in this fake world with no knowledge of magic or the real world by torturing all of them with their own evil pain magic and sacrilege, Leroux expressed to all. "And revenge for what we have to do to our own daughter and your sister," Leroux added. "The plan is set, for as soon as they've all been lured into the torture arena, this dimension, and left their sanctuaries unknowingly, and all caught, we will stop everything and tell Jazel the truth and start her recovery from trauma right away and help her join our real world, which will be safe forever." Haroun comforted his daughters with his words. "She's just so happy and lovely and friendly," Naya cried. "I dread to see her be terrified and traumatized," she continued. "I know," Shasta comforted Naya. She gave her shoulder a squeeze. "Remember to be strong. We can get through this. Jazel is our champion, and this is for the safety of our whole universe. Remember, we wouldn't even be able to have experienced having our younger sister yet if there were never a solution to destroying evil and their evil intentions towards us. 2 weeks, and then she will have a lovely existence again, and love her life in the real world too. She is our savior," Shasta told Naya. Naya breathed in and nodded her head. "I know. I will be strong as Jazel will be," Naya promised. "Family hug, everyone," Leroux instructed. The four stood up from the sofas and hugged each other in a circle. Naya nodded to herself. "I'm ready," she told her family. The demonic warp was going to start in 12 hours' time when Jazel was at her pretend job at the town hall as an assistant. She would see her first demonic face at 3 p.m. exactly. By the time Jazel ran home to her family, the secret stripping of magical powers and transporting all who entered the arena to Sacrilege and replacing them with a robot version of themselves to return to their sanctuaries and say and do everything they would have done themselves, powers would be triggered in Jazel by connecting the hidden powers in her to fear. The nightmare world would trigger her powers themselves. The family prepared themselves as they would attend the party and countdown to Jazel's nightmare beginning, as Evil called it, from 2 p.m. onwards in the evil Feyaruter's designed hall for every member of their evil world to attend, from Feyaruter to Demon to Erastian. They would begin the party at 1 p.m. with music for all to celebrate the beginning beforehand. As usual, they would have all sorts of luxury desserts and candy for all to enjoy during the party. At 2 p.m, Zarafak would lead the Feyaruter into thanking and celebrating the four and the wonderful job they had done on raising Jazel, as her pretend family and leading her into the demonic mental torture prison. Then they would thank all cast members and all would count down to 3 p.m. together. The family prepared themselves for one of the final times they would have to pretend to be evil in their disguises in front of the nightmare world. Their victory over evil was guaranteed and almost at hand. The family waited together anxiously, waiting for their day of dread for their daughter and sister to begin. "11 hours later. Chapter 14. Zarafak stood on a stage with all the Feyaruter, with the Council of Darkness standing at the front with himself. He had called for everyone's attention. The masses of evil had been partying and celebrating the beginning of Jazel's mental torture prison of demon faces for the last couple of hours. "My friends," Zarafak announced to all, "let us start by thanking and congratulating our pretend family of Jazel's. They have worked hard raising her and acting for the last 23.5 years. They have been paramount in leading her into our demonic warp and are always going to be paramount in keeping the mental torture prison going by pretending there are no demonic faces outside. As a child, really, she will be dependent on living with them to know a way out of it, which there isn't," Zarafak roared in happiness. "To our wonderful heroes, Mesto, Sabalt, Divaka, and Barinto," Zarafak cheered to the hordes of evil. There was thunderous applause and cheering as the four left their seats to take to the stage and be celebrated. The four smiled and waved and looked elated at the applause and what was about to happen. They all projected their voices at the same time and shouted thank you to the hordes of evil. Next, Zarafak celebrated congratulated and thanked all of the cast, the members of the Fey Ruta who had been pretend school students, teachers, townspeople, and pretend work colleagues at Jazel's current pretend job where the nightmare would begin. The cast all took to the centre stage and smiled and waved at the hordes of evil. The rest of the hour was taken up by members of the Fey Ruta doing various speeches to celebrate the fake world and what they were all going to enter the dimension to do to Jazel in their demonic disguises, along with the demons going in to torment Jazel with their own faces. Zarafat called for silence again as it was almost 1 minute to 3 p.m. He started a 60-second countdown on a massive clock in the centre of the hall. All the hordes of evil watched venomously and excitedly as the clock ticked down to 3 p.m. 10, Zarafat roared. 9, 8, 7, every single being in the hall and on the stage counted with him. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, the hordes of evil shouted together. Zarafak silenced himself and pointed towards a massive cinema screen which appeared behind him. The scene opened, showing Jazel sitting at a desk in the pretend town hall. Chapter 15. Jazel sat happily at her desk, putting the paper files into a folder. She had been working in the town hall for 5 years now and had thoroughly enjoyed her job after her school years. She had loved school and loved her life now. She did basic administration jobs around the town hall and some basic cleaning. She had enjoyed herself in the role for the last few years. She loved working in the town hall where festivals for the townspeople were organised for the fun of everyone. She loved being a part of the team that made sure festivals were always organised and held for the enjoyment of their community. Jazel was finishing placing the files in the folder when her manager Venek came up to her at her desk. "Jazel, how are you doing?" Venek asked Jazel. Jazel glanced up at her manager Venek and screamed in horror as she saw his face transform into a red demon's. The face was more terrifying than the pictures of monsters she had seen at school in storybooks. The demon's face was red with black stripes on it. Jazel clambered out of her seat and started walking backwards. She stared horrified at her manager's face. "Jazel, are you okay?" She heard Venek's voice come out of the demon and heard the voice get progressively deeper. She shook her head in disbelief, gasping. She glanced around the room at her 4 work colleagues. They were all looking at her confused. The next moment, all their faces suddenly switched into demon faces as well. One had turned yellow with green stripes, another blue. They were all staring at her, looking dumbfounded. "Jazel," she heard her female work colleague say. Jazel stared terrified at their demonic faces. The next moment she turned around and hurried out of the door. She didn't see anyone else as she ran down the corridor. She ran through the front doors of the town hall, petrified and confused with no idea about what was going on. Zarafak watched in the large hall as Jazel ran out of the town hall. He loved watching her fear. "Let's go," Zarafak cheered to the room. Many members of the nightmare world began teleporting out of the hall into the invisible stadium around Jazel, which she couldn't see. The scene would shift for the audience so they could see the whole journey home from their seats as planned. As agreed, Zarafak had decided to watch the rest of the beginning live in the invisible stadium with the rest of the Council of Darkness. Zarafak ordered his magic to send him into the dimension where Jazel lived, which was a portal in the palace room of Mesto and Sabolts. He grinned as himself and his 11 friends teleported into the stadium. There were some cheers as Zarafak turned around and saw many already standing and sitting in the seats. They cheered for himself and his 11 friends as they stood in the stadium. He waved at his fans. "Let's get a closer look," Zarafak said to the rest of the Council of Darkness. "Our achievement," Harfilter gloated. The 12 teleported in front of Jazel invisibly so they didn't disrupt the audience's view. They stared at the face which had caused such envy and led to them placing the baby in this fake world. As Zarafak thrived off watching the fear on Jazel's face, he felt a sudden plunge. He screamed as he fell down a dark cave, his thoughts struggling to catch up to his physical body. He hit the ground hard and felt pain. He groaned with anguish and looked around him. He was in sacrilege. He felt a wetness on his lip. He raised his hand to his mouth and then looked at his hand. There was red blood on his hand. "No!" Zarafak shouted. "This cannot be!" He roared in disbelief. He looked around himself. The darkness of the cave suddenly lit up. He saw an orange glow all around him and saw the 11 members of the Council of Darkness around him. He looked up as more and more bodies were falling and screaming into the pit. Zarafak panicked as he saw the orange rivers of flame that he had invented with his 11 friends. He started in disbelief, uttering, "No, no, 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 no." His 11 friends began screaming as they looked around themselves. Suddenly, as more and more bodies landed, Zarifat cried out as he saw members of the Feyaruta he had put into sacrilege surround them all on ledges above them around the cave he himself had designed. "No!" he screamed again, his screams of anguish being lost in the massive screams all around the cave. "How?" Orison cried. "How did this happen?" Kalsha cried. One of the good Feyaruta projected their voice. "Hello to the Council of Darkness and your evil legions," one of the Feyaruta called out to the hordes of evil. Zarifak saw that it was Karlin, the one who had tricked Jahiros into giving him his magic back, who was speaking. "I can see you are looking for an explanation by your confused faces," Karlin jeered to all. "You were tricked into leaving your sanctuaries. The Feyaruta, Elazra, came up with a plan for a beautiful baby to be born and lure you out of your sanctuaries. The real Laro and Harum and their 2 daughters Shasta and Nea, with a team of 10 million, all with their brand new disguised faces, pretended to be another sanctuary of evil. A magical spell meant you didn't question their disguises. Our pretend sanctuary didn't have your protective magic on it, obviously. So, our chosen one Jazel, whose face Elazra worked on to make the most beautiful being in existence so she can enjoy your plan of mental torture, will enjoy your plan of torment for 2 weeks. Hidden powers to strip you of your magic and transport you to your prison sacrilege and replace you all with a robot version of yourselves, so that others won't know, until they're caught, were placed inside Jazel at birth. The powers were connected to the emotion fear, and as soon as Jazel saw your demonic faces, her powers were triggered. So all your hordes of evil will leave their castles and cinema screen television screens to watch Jazel in your torment arena in person in your stadiums of seats, or will enter to participate. As soon as they enter, they will be captured. The ones watching in their palace castles will see your robots return and not know any different until they too are captured. Jazel was loved by her mum and dad and sisters and will be recovered from the trauma of your torment. This which we had to do to one of our own because of your despicable evil. You will pay in here for what will feel like forever before yourselves are killed too. When the 2 weeks are up, Laro, Harum, and Shasta and Nail will come in here to punish you themselves by inflicting pain on you for all that you have done and for what they must do to their child and sister because of you all. Let your torture begin, Karnal shouted to them all. The 12 creators of the end of the universes, torture, demons, death, and the prison sacrilege, Rakan, Shisa, Tazkor, Harfelto, Morotil Nizul, Festoon, Amalsha, Weslov, Orison, Kalsha, and Zarafak turned to stare as hordes of masked people entered the prison. Your punishers, Karlin announced to the defeated members of evil. Enjoy, Karlin shouted to all. Zarafak watched as the faces of the good Feyaruta looked relieved, happy, and vengeful. He screamed as the punishers ran to all of them as they themselves had done to the good and began beating him with a bat. Zarafak screamed and screamed, experiencing the unbearable pain he himself had invented with the 11 others. He was defeated. Chapter 16. Jazel glanced worriedly around her as she departed from the town hall entrance. She glanced around to see if there were any more demons. She began her walk home along the path she usually took through the forest towards her home. She jumped as she saw a female demon with a purple face and long grey hair walk past her. The demon grinned at her. Jazel jumped out of her skin again. The demon did not touch her. Jazel continued to walk, looking aghast, wondering what was going on. She was beginning to quiver. As she walked past more trees, another demonic head popped out from behind the tree. She heard the demon whisper, "Jazel," in a raspy voice. Jazel shrieked out loud again as the demon merely watched her without touching her. Jazel began to run in terror all the way to her house. She ran past 2 more demons on the way to her front door. When she finally reached her front door, she fumbled for her key in her bag. With slippery hands, she managed to open the front door to her house. "Mum!" she cried out loud, rushing into the house. "What is it?" her mum inquired, coming out of the kitchen. "There are demon faces all on the roads and paths and at work," Jazel cried. "What are you talking about, Jazel?" her mum asked, looking confused. Her 2 sisters came down the stairs, already home from their own jobs. "Outside! There are demons everywhere," she cried. "Okay," her mum responded kindly. "Show me." Jazel led her mum outside. She screamed as she saw another male and female demon walk past them on the road, not touching them again. "There, didn't you see?" Jazel whimpered. 2 demons just walked past us." Jazel looked back behind her to see her 2 sisters join themselves. "There's nothing there," her mum cried out. 2 people just walked past us." "I know what I saw," Jazel cried. "Demon faces everywhere. Their faces turned into demon faces at work." 2 people just walked past us, Jazel, her sister Naya told her. Jazel stared at them in disbelief. She knew they were pretending not to notice. She had heard the demon whisper her name. She wasn't imagining things. Her mum touched her forehead. "I think you are going crazy," her mum suddenly exclaimed, mocking her. "We should take you to the doctor." "No," Jazel shrieked, terrified. "There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not going to the doctor." Jazel knew she wasn't crazy. I wasn't sure what her family were doing to her. Why were they messing with her mind? Suddenly, Jazel saw her dad approach them. Jazel pleaded with her dad, trying to tell him about the demons. Her dad repeated what her mum and sisters had said. There were no demons anywhere. Jazel gave up and went back into her house with her family. She sat in the living room with them all. It was Friday, so Jazel didn't have to go into work again until Monday. Again, her mum tried to suggest she needed help and needed to see a doctor. Her dad sat and listened to his wife. "There's nothing wrong with me," Jazel argued back. "I can't go into work on Monday," Jazel cried. "Well, if you're not going to the doctor, you can get back to work on Monday and stop this nonsense. Your dad lost his job, as you know, at the market, so we need you to go to work to pay for the roof over our head and the bills," her mum shouted at her. Jazel looked at her family in disbelief. She couldn't believe they were mentally torturing her in this way. What was the truth of the world? How could it suddenly go from normal to a demonic nightmare? Who was she? Was this her real family? How could she have lost grip on reality in mere moments? She didn't know what else to do. The demons hadn't touched her. Were they all in on something with her family? How was any of this possible? Jazel decided in her head she would have to pretend. The demons hadn't touched her, she was alive, and her family weren't physically touching her either. She decided she had no choice but to stay quiet and go to work on Monday and pretend she didn't see any demons. The other option was being called crazy. She didn't want to end up in an insane asylum as she had heard about and as her mum was suggesting. Jazel nodded her head. "Okay," she murmured. "I'll stop it. I must have let my imagination run away with me. I'll go to work on Monday." "Good," her mum responded. "I'm going to get dinner ready." Jazel's dad touched her face for a moment and said, "Be brave." He went upstairs. Jazel collapsed back on the sofa and stared into space. Jazel went to bed that evening quivering. She had looked outside the window before going to her bedroom and saw a terrifying demon face walk past the house and glance up at the window with a small smile. Jazel had shook her head to herself. "I'm not going crazy," she told herself. "I can see them with my very own eyes." Jazel cried out in distress and tucked herself into bed, cradling her duvet around her. She felt sleep approach her quickly and fell into a dreamless sleep. Downstairs, Jazel's family glanced at one another. They had put a magic spell on Jazel so that she fell asleep without a problem. As arranged, they had magicked in Jazel having the weekend to prepare so the evil Fey Ruta couldn't send her to work the next day. The family looked at one another, strengthening themselves, knowing that the nightmare world had begun to get captured. On Monday, Jazel forced herself to have her breakfast and walk to work. She was determined to pretend she didn't see any demonic faces in fear of being called crazy. She walked to work and tried not to glance at the male and female demons casually walking past her with the odd glance and smile. She wondered what had happened to the human race. Were they deliberately changing their faces to torment her? She had no idea how magic could really exist like in the stories, but she was living it. Trembling, Jazel made her way to the town hall, wondering why the demons didn't touch her. She was wondering why they didn't kill her. She wondered why they had chosen this mental torture for herself. She entered the town hall, realizing that the demons were enjoying themselves as they grinned at her. She gasped as she bumped into her boss. His face was human for a moment again and then changed back into the demon face she had seen on Friday. She knew she couldn't run away screaming. She couldn't run home and say she was seeing demon faces again, as her mum would make her go to the doctor, and she would be locked up in an insane asylum. She would just have to pretend as long as the demons didn't touch her. "So sorry about the other day," Jazel muttered to her boss, Venek quickly in his demonic form. "I thought I was going to throw up," Jazel made up to explain her behaviour the other day as opposed to telling the truth. Venek glossed over the lie and just said, "Okay. Here's a list of your tasks to do today," Venek growled at her, his demonic face terrifying her. Jazel took the sheet of paper from his claw, her hand trembling. She tried not to touch his claw, feeling terrified. She rushed to her desk and got on with her tasks as best as she could, pretending not to see the demons. She pretended all day long from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. She avoided talking to her now demonic colleagues. They acted like everything was normal all day. At 5 p.m. she rushed home again, walking past more and more demonic faces. Every day for the full week, she followed the same routine, pretending everything was normal at home in the evenings with her family, and going to work to earn money for her family, pretending she wasn't working with a host of demons during the day. She wondered what was going on, thinking humans were doing this to her with magic. They were pretending to be demons, she thought, but had no idea why her family or anyone would do this to her. Why were her family a part of it? What was their motive? Fear became Jazel's secret partner, slowly consuming her from the inside. Each day was horrible. By the 14th day, Jazel had retreated into herself, barely talking to anyone at home, and stopped forcing herself to make conversation with her work colleagues' demonic faces during her lunch break. She had felt happiness leave her. She felt terrified and alone. Then, on the 14th day of her torment, a miracle arrived. Jazel put the key into her door. It had been a full 2 weeks since the nightmare had started. Somehow she had survived. The demons didn't kill her, they didn't touch her, neither did her family. She endured somehow, pretending, always scared of being called crazy and being put in an insane asylum. Jazel opened the door and walked into her living room. She gasped as her mom, dad and sisters rushed over to her crying. "We're so sorry," they all cried. It's over, we'll tell you everything," her family cried to her. Jazel broke down, breaking her 2-week silence, and cried into her mum and dad's arms. She let out the breath she had been holding for 2 weeks. She cried and cried, relieved that her nightmare was over. "We'll tell you everything, my darling. No more demons. We're sorry. They're all gone now. We're so sorry we had to do this to you. Let us tell you everything from the beginning," Jazel's mum cried into her hair. Her dad's eyes were wet with tears, and her sisters had their arms around her. Jazel let them lead her to the sofa and began to listen to their story. 7 years later. Chapter 17. Jazel did her stretches by the ocean and sea that morning, as she usually did. It had been 7 years since the day her mum, dad and sisters had told her of the truth of her existence. They told her how she had never been in the real world, and how she had been the chosen saviour made into the most beautiful being to exist, born from her parents to lure the side of evil out of their sanctuaries into the torture arena they had prepared for her, so good could live again and defeat evil forever. Her family told her of how they had set up and tricked the evil side. Jazel had felt proud to be the saviour and was told she was the chosen one due to bravery, as she could endure the 2 weeks, how long it would take all evil to leave the sanctuary to watch her in person in their torture arena, or enter in disguise to participate, while she would learn to stay silent, endure, and not try to kill anyone or herself during it. She had a restful and wonderful time after her family had told her the truth. They moved her into their real home, a palace, and told her about magic. The palace was separate from the real world. It had taken 7 years to heal Jazel from her trauma and transition and adjust her to the real world and move her on from the fake dimension designed by evil. She had done everything her parents had told her to do to recover. She rested and learned about the real world from themselves and learned about their dark past. She was glad all members of the nightmare world, from Feyruta to Erastian to Demon, were all getting their comeuppance in Sacrilege for a very long time, and would be getting executed for their crimes one day too. Their own evil done back to themselves. Jazel healed and learned and had a wonderful time healing with her family. She had discovered the delights of the real world, TV, real world food, and knew there were many more things to experience when she had joined the real world outside fully. Her family prepared to integrate her with the world outside their bubble. She had even been told she would marry her perfect match in the future and have children with himself and grandchildren, and had forever to enjoy in the real world with her loving family and husband in the future. She felt excited at the prospect. She knew her parents and sisters went into Sacrilege to punish the defeated side of evil. She had chosen to become a punisher too in the future when she was a lot older and couldn't wait to inflict torture and pain onto the evil side, helping them get their comeuppance. She felt proud and determined to become a punisher as well as saviour in the future. Around 1 month later, it was time for Jazel to join the real world and attend her coronation in front of the entire universe. She was to be hailed saviour of the universe and rewarded with a crown announcing her as the queen of the universe for her reward. The reward was eternal. She was beginning to enjoy a lot of presents arriving at the family palace too from the good of the universe. She felt excited about her reward, as she would form a small universe council with her family and allows her to organise events and festivals for the whole universe, along with the entire government looking after everyone. Herself and her family were all to be honoured that evening on stage before the whole universe. It was 7 p.m. and time for her coronation and first steps into the real world. Leroy, Haroom, Shasta and Nea led their daughter and sister out of their palace and magically entered a wonderful new corridor. "Welcome to Kavacia and Maraskian," her dad whispered to her. She looked in awe as they stepped into an empty, beautiful corridor. Her family walked her along the corridor. They opened the door to a grand stage and led her out onto the stage. Jazel was wearing a beautiful pink glittery gown for her coronation. She gasped at the thunderous applause. She saw beaming members of the Fae Ruta on stage. She looked to the crowd, which went on forever, and looked at them all amazed as they cheered and applauded her. Lazarus, who she had recently met, beamed at her and declared to the cheering crowd, "Our saviour, the new queen of the universe, Jazel." Jazel kneeled as her family had taught her to, and Lazarus placed the most stunning crown imaginable on Jazel's head. Jazel stood upright again and beamed. She waved at the crowd, feeling proud and happy that they were all safe and happy again, safe from the clutches of evil forever. Jazel beamed, and her family and Lazarus led her to an astonishing throne. Jazel sat on her throne beaming, fully recovered from trauma, and happily accepted her crown and reward, and waved at the cheering crowd, ecstatic about being rewarded with the honour of being Queen of the Universe. She felt excited for the future and couldn't wait to begin enjoying the delights and magic of the real world. In the depths of Sacrilege, the shouts and jeers of the defeated evil powerless villains could be heard. The Punishers had paused their torturing so that the former Nightmare World could watch the coronation of Jazel on a big screen in the middle of Sacrilege. Zarafat groaned out loud as his dream of being famous and popular was being given to Jazel instead. He screamed thinking about being tricked all these years later. He had endured the unbearable pain and hated every Punisher who chased him through Sacrilege. The others of all species tried to jeer at him when they could if they saw him run past themselves. Every evil Fae Ruta, Erastian, and demon had been captured. Now they all screamed as the baby they had meant to torment for all of eternity was crowned saviour. Zarafat screamed the most of all as he saw her become the most famous person in all of existence. "No!" Zarafat screamed. "No!" His jeers got swallowed in the screams of horror from evil. Their victim had become a winner. She was the saviour, queen of the universe, and they were nothing. Nothing but a defeated evil curse in their very own walls of Sacrilege to be punished and tortured until their day of execution. The evil magic created by the Council of Darkness, now their curse for what would feel like all of eternity, to be followed by the nothingness of not existing anymore, as they had tried to inflict on the world. Zarafat cried out again, watching the coronation. "I am nobody. I am nothing again," he wailed, with only himself to listen. The end. Okay, everyone. So thank you for listening. That was season 2, episode 8 of my podcast, Book and Story World with author Priya Grewal. So the first 3 chapters are in season 1, episode 2, and the rest of the My Story Battle for the Universe is season 2, episode 8. So take care, everyone. Have a lovely week. Ta-ta. Bye-bye.